right. එතකොට අද කතා කරන්න තියෙන්නේ database management systems ගැන, right? So it's better you have a piece of paper with you, right? So we can draw some diagram like when I'm asking you to do, right? So I'm sharing my note here with you people, and you can collect the tunes by tomorrow. I'll prepare the things at my place, right? So come and collect it, right? Yeah, so this is the note that you are going to receive, right? So for today we are going to go through this, and තප්පරකින් අපිත් එක්ක තව දෙන්නෙක් එකතු වෙනවා settle කරගන්න. Yeah, so you are going to go through this through the DBMS lesson, right? හරි. එතකොට මෙතන අපි කතා කරන කොටස් දෙකක් තියෙනවා. එකක් තමයි how to talk with the DBMS, right? How to talk with the database, right? To do that, we are going to learn the SQL, structured query language, right? Then we are going to learn how to design the DBMS, right? So the first thing that we are going to do is the designing part, because we have to design a database to code the database or to create the database, right? So for the creation and for the communication part, we use this SQL language, which is called the structured query language. And for the designing, we have to do it manually, right? There are many ways of doing it, and even there are softwares that help you to do that. But in our syllabus, we are going to do it manually, right? So it's better you go through that, right? Okay, so before I go for the designing part, there are theory part regarding the DBMS. So let's quickly go through that, right? So yeah, so this is regarding the things regarding the data and the information which you know already. So since we are talking about the database, we just like memorizing the things, right? So what is data and what is information, right? So a comparison is given at the very first page. So data means raw facts and all these things, right? And information is the process facts which are being derived through the data, right? And data is just text and numbers, and as well as there are some what you call the meaningless parts as well, like the symbols, colors, kind of things. So those can be considered as data, and information is a redefined data. And data can be gathered from the records, from the observations, as well as from the interviews, from the questionnaires, right? Kind of things. And the information is based on the analysis, like the things we have gathered will be analyzed and processed. Then we do the like we get use of it, right? Through the thorough analysis, right? And when it comes to the form, data is an unorganized form because it is just a scattered form. අපිට හම්බෙන්නේ මොන හරි දත්ත එකතුවක්, like it is not organized. But when it becomes an information, we make it an organized one, like you are receiving like in your examination, the marks of each and every student is going to be a data. So it is in an unorganized manner. So the name of the student and the marks will be there. That's all. And when these things are organized, so the mark sheet is created by organizing things. So having the student names and marks for each and every subject. So at the end, you can find the total subjects, the total for the total for all the subjects, and then the average, and as well as the rank. So it is kind of an organized one, right? Data, yeah, it is may or may not be useful. Means some data can be like neglect, without getting any use of that. And most of the data, yes, definitely we use it for create the information, but individually we won't be using those data, right? අපිට mark sheet එකක marks ටික විතරක් ගෙනල්ලා දාලා දුන්නොත් it doesn't have any meaning නේද? ඒතර අපිට හොයාගන්න වෙනවා. හිතන්නකො index numbers ටික දාලා කියන්නේ පන්තියේ තියෙන 1 2 3 4 කියලා පන්තියේ 40ට වෙනකන් දාලා marks ටික දාලා ගෙනත් දෙනවා. So we can't remember who is the first student, who is the second student exactly. So we have to go through the register and refer and have an analysis regarding that. So individually අර මට හම්බෙනවා කියපු කොල කෑල්ල is not very useful, but again it will be used to create a information which is in the mark sheet, right? And data is not a specific thing, right? It can be like a part of a picture and some numbers likewise, and information is a specific thing. And dependency, data does not depend on anything, right? In other words, it's not depend on information, but information is highly depend on the data. So those are the comparisons, and the here we are talking about structured and unstructured data as well. So structured data, as it shows in the picture, it's a well structured one. We can have the idea very clearly when the data is structured, like we are having the data inside a table. And when the data is unstructured, like together we can have an idea, but individually we won't be able to have a particular idea when the data is unstructured, like the data on the image, right? අපිට image එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ unstructured data එකලෝ image එක 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 වර්ණ තියෙනවා එක එක විදිහට ගිහිලා තියෙනවානේ, so it is an unstructured one. So here I have given you the comparison regarding the structured and unstructured data, right? So structured data's characteristics are like predefined data models are there, usually text only, easy to search. So you think about a table when it calls the structured data, and think about a picture when you call when we discussing the unstructured data. No predefined data model, maybe text, images, sounds, videos, and all these things, and difficult to search, right? Resides in structured data. It is resides in a database or a data warehouse. That's a bigger concept than the database. And unstructured data you can find in a lot of places, like in applications, no SQL database means like the database which are not using the SQLs, right? And data warehouses, you can find unstructured data as well. මොකද warehouse එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ අපි දත්ත ගෙනල්ලා නිකන් ගබඩා කරලා තියෙනවා, right? එතකොට එතන structured data and unstructured data both can be there. Data lake එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ data warehouse එකකට වඩා ලොකු තැනක්. ඒකට කියන්නේ තැනට අදාළවයි අපි ඉතින් කතා කරන්නේ. database එක කියලා කියන්නේ පොඩිම model එක. Data warehouse become a bigger model and have many data and many form of data. And data lake, it's an enormous thing where we can find big data as well, right? And both these things are generated by the machines and the humans, right? Structured and unstructured both. Typical applications, you can find structured data in a lot of systems regarding airline reservation system, inventory control, CRM, ERP systems, those kind of things. And unstructured one you can have in the word processing, presentation, email clients, and there are many, right? Like අපිට ඒක වෙන් කරගන්න තියෙන හොඳම method එක තමයි, if it is regarding a system, it's always going to be structured data. මොකද system එකකට data gather කරගන්න ඕනේ like according to some structure, right? And when the things are like with the application which uses these pictures, videos, audios, all these things, then the unstructured data can be found on those places. Examples it is given, so dates, phone numbers, social security numbers, those are can be taken as the structured data. And unstructured data වලට text files, reports, මොකද ඒව ඇතුලේ images තියෙනවා, like soft copies නම් video එකක්, audio එකක් apply වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So those can be taken as unstructured data, right? Okay, people, is it clear so far? Mata confirmation එකක් දෙන්න clear ද කියන එක මේ වෙනකම්. Right, great. හරි ඊළඟ ටික කතා කරන්න මට මේ pages ටික white board එකට ගන්න ඕනේ. මට වෙලාවක් පොඩි වෙලාවක් දෙන්න එක ගන්නකම්. Right. හරි board එක load වෙනකම් පොඩ්ඩක් ඉන්න. Connection issue එකක් තියෙනවා. Right. I will search it for you. Huh? Okay. Yeah. Right. Hari. So the next thing is about the definition of a database. So when you are having your tube with you, you can highlight this particular place, right? So definition of a database, it can be said a database, the most general sense is the organized collection of data. And more specifically, a database is an electronic system that allows data to be easily accessed, manipulated, and updated, right? And there is some another way that we can define a one. So when you are having the tools, I'll give you the other definition so you can write it, right? And we are here to talk about the database model next. So there are many different models, right? So the first one is the flat file system. Now, this is basically referring to a manual database that we are maintaining uh, in most of the cases in a big logbook or in a big file, right? So we are just having a one big table to store the things, and inside that one big table we are going to store each and every data regarding a particular object, right? So here as an example I have taken the details regarding the student, and the student number, name, as well as the grade, and the address or the city that they are traveling with. So likewise it will be continued, like the teachers that the student is learning from, and what are the parent names and all these things, and will be maintained. So it's just a one particular big table. So that's why we call it a flat file system, right? So, and in here, there will be very big problems when you are storing data on a one single table. We are going to discuss that later. So this is called the flat file system, right? So the next one is called, yeah, so drawbacks are here. It is given. So data redundancy. Data redundancy means like the same data is repeating more than one place all over the database, right? So like there can be redundant data in a very minimal manner, right? ඔයගලන්ට පාඩම කරලා ඉවර වෙනකොට තේරෙයි data redundant වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එකම data එක තැන් තැන් වල තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. But not in every case. It should be a minimal one, right? And the data redundancy will like lead you to the integrity issues. Data නිවැරදිද නැද්ද කියන එක ගැන, right? ප්‍රශ්න වලට යොමු කරන්න පුළුවන්. Then we are not using specific language. Now here, a specific language means for the database management, as well as when we are creating it, we can use any different language like Sinhala, English, Chinese, like Hindi, you can use, right? And required knowledge for storing data. And that particular thing is said because can be database එක handle කරන කෙනා, flat file system එක handle කරන කෙනාට තමයි idea එක තියෙන්නේ what to be stored and how to be stored, right? Since it is a very big data table, if a newcomer comes there, they need to go through how these things are being happen. But when it is like arranged into a system, it is something common in every system. If you are going to add the detail, right, you will be having a screen to add details, and particular details are asked, so any newcomer can add those details if they are having those. But for a flat file system, that particular person who is handling this is the one who knows how to store data, in which columns, in which data, and how those things are being written, right, in which format. So everything regarding that flat file system is on that particular person's head, inside that head. So someone have to learn from him or her how to deal with this flat file system, right? And basic security capabilities, right? Like you can lock the books inside a cupboard. That's all that you can do, right? You can't have password, you can't have usernames, and you can't have access privileges kind of things. You won't be, right? And only sequential access for files. Yes, so like you can have a table of content at the very first page of the table, but since it is upgrading or like the updating over the period, if you are going to find something, you have to like turn page by page, right? As an example, take the admission book in your school, right? ගොඩක් ඉස්කෝල වල තාම පාවිච්චි වෙන්නේ අර පොතේ ලියන method එක. So it's a very big book regarding one particular year. They are maintaining an admission, right? So like all the students who are admitted to the school on that particular year will be written on that particular book. So if someone named ඕගල්ලන්ට ඕන refer කරගන්න ඕගොල්ලෝ admit වෙච්ච දවස, you have to refer like how many books back, like 12 books back, you have to refer, right? එතකොට ඒක කරපු කෙනා මේ මොහොතේ නැති වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. But then you have to get that particular book where in the year that you have admitted to the school, then you have to turn according to your admission number, right? So you have to search. So you have to go page by page. That's what we call sequential. Right? Yeah, so those are the drawbacks of the flat file system, and then the hierarchical model. Now, this hierarchical model is something like a tree. So and it is maintaining a relationship called parent and child, right? So there are many parents, and according to that, they will have child. So if in this diagram, college can be considered as a parent, and these are the child of the college, right? So this one as well. And for course teacher and student, this is going to be the parent, and these are childs of department, children of department. Right? So likewise, and again, when it comes to the theory and labs, this one become a parent. Run this book එක දැන් print වෙන්නේ ඔයගලන්ට ඇවිල්ලා අරගන්න පුළුවන් හෙට මම අද තමයි finalize වෙන්නේ, right? හෙට ඇවිල්ලා අරගන්න එතකොට refer කරගෙන යන්න පුළුවන්, right? Right, so this will be the parent. හෙට ඕන වෙලාවක එන්න රන්දිස මම ගෙදර නැති වුණත් මම book එක ගෙදර තියලා යන්න, right? So you can collect it. Right, so this is going to be a parent. Right, Haridan's right, and these are going to be children of the course. Right, so it is maintaining this particular thing, and if you need to refer something, you have to come through the hierarchy, right? Again, if you need to refer the let's say student, first you have to access the college, then you have to access the department, then you have to access the student, right? ඔය විදිහට තමයි එන්නේ. මෙයාගෙන් මෙයාට ගිහිල්ලා එයාගෙන් මෙයාට එන්න ඕනේ refer කරනවා නම්, right? So always you have to access through the root, right? So that is what you call the hierarchical model. And the next one is called the network model. This is kind of a hierarchical model, but here the same parent is going to be a children at some time, child in some times. So the same child is going to be a parent at some times, right? Connected, right? So then when you are considering the administration, these people are going to be the child, right? So this is the parent, and these are child. Right? And in another scenario, if you consider the student as a parent, for that, administration is going to be a child, teacher is going to be a child, and rules and regulation is going to be a child, right? Not the physical resources, right? Then these are going to be child. Right? ඔය විදිහට තමයි network model එක එන්නේ. දැන් මේවා ගැන ඕගොල්ලෝ like just get to know the concept, that's all, because we are not going to like expand these things and talk about it, right? So get to know the diagram and get to know what's the concept behind it, right? This is the one we are going to talk through the lesson, relational model, right? So in relational model, we are having this table structure, and using the primary keys, we are going to create the relations of each other. This is the student table, which has the student detail. These are the subject table, which has the subject detail, right? And this is going to become the marks table, or the marks which has obtained for the subject from the particular student, right? So it is in a separate table, the marks table, right? So they will be having the relationship using these things, which is called the primary keys. So we are going to talk about these things along the lesson, right? And yeah, in this page, let me turn this. Right, so in this particular page, they have talked about the comparison regarding hold on, I missed the object oriented one. Yeah, so now object relational model is something that you are using when you are dealing with object-oriented programming languages. There are languages called object-oriented programming languages, like in advanced Python, you can find object-oriented part in Java, C++, right? So when you are dealing with those kind of languages, the database that you are going to use. Okay, good. So go and show it to me, right? So when you are dealing with object-oriented languages, you have to deal with an object relational model, right? And it is not a must, but it will help to do the communication between the object-oriented language and through the database in a smooth way, right? මොකද දෙන්නම එකම ජාතිය object-oriented languages and object relational models. තවත් එක්කෙනෙකුට අපිට object relational model එකක් නොවන කෙනෙක්ව match කරගන්න පුළුවන්, but it will find some complex situations when you are connecting the database, right? So in object relational model, what they are doing is they are just having the components as per the objects, right? අපි student කෙනෙක් ගත්තොත් they are considering the student as an object. So according to that object, they will store the data in a specific manner. Don't go to think how the things are going to happen, right? It's a different scenario, right? Just remember it is regarding this objects which we are going to deal with, right? And this comparison, I need you to just go through it. I'm not going to explain it, right? So just read it and have the idea, right? So the comparison which we have, those are the things that we have discussed on the previous topics, right? So I'm moving to the, yeah. Right, I'm getting the money focus. Right, so this particular place is illustrating you how the flat file system and database systems are dealt with, right? And the what is the differences between those two? So it's easy for you to remember. So the drawbacks of the flat file system are being eliminated in the database system. So flat file system is having data redundancy. Database is no data redundancy or minimal data redundancy, right? And data integrity issues is there in the flat file system and not in the database system, right? So specific query language is used in database and not in file system, right? So likewise, the disadvantages that we talked about regarding the flat file system are being eliminated in the database system, right? And yeah, when it comes to the object relational model, it's better you know about these terms, right? Because these things, we need these things when we come to designing the database, right? Which we are going to do today. So in a relational database model, a table is referred as a relation, right? In most of the cases it will be referred as a relation, right? ඒක නිසා මෙයාව හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න, right? And inside a relation or a table you will be having these columns, right? Right, like the ID, name, and those kind of things. These are referred as attributes, right? So attributes are the one who is describing the relation, right? Relation එක මොන වගේද, table එක මොන වගේද කියලා නැත්නම් මොනවාද තියෙන්නේ කියලා විස්තර කරන කෙනා තමයි attributes කියලා අපි කතා කරන්නේ, right? ඕක ඕගලන්ට ER diagram එක අඳිනකොට අපි table එක කියන එක ER diagram එකෙන් diagram එකෙන් තමයි අත්තටම table එක match කරගන්නේ. ER diagram එකේදී table එක වගේ වැඩ කරන කෙනාට අපි කියනවා entity එකක් කියලා, right? We are going to talk about those things, right? So entity is having attributes. So attribute will describe how the entity is, right? And a tuple is referred to a record here, right? ඔයා මෙතන record එකක් ලිව්වොත් like 001, right? ABC ඔය විදිහට record එකක් ලිව්වොත්, so this is called a tuple, right? This is called a tuple. And relationship is something we are going to make by using the primary keys and the foreign keys. Then primary key එකක් කියන්නේ foreign key එකක් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා ඔයගලන්ට idea එකක් නැතුව ඇති, right? So the relationship, just for the moment, just remember relationship happens in between two tables. Then අපි අර object relational model එක ගැන කතා කරනකොට, sorry, relational model එක ගැන කතා කරනකොට දැන් මේ මෙතන තියෙන මේ e තලෙන් පෙන්නලා තියෙන්නේ relationship එක මේගොල්ලන්, right? ඒ කියන්නේ මේ subject table එකයි marks එකයි connect වෙන්නේ කොහොමද? ඊළඟට subject එකයි student එකයි connect වෙන්නේ කොහොමද? Right? So that is what you call the relationship, right? Right. So these terms are important, right? So remember, right? Then කොළයයි පැන්සලයි මම ලෑස්ති කර කොළයයි පැන්සලක් ලෑස්ති කරගන්න සහ පෑනකුත් ළඟ තිබ්බට කමක් නැහැ, right? දැන් ඉස්සරහට මම කියන පොඩි පොඩි දේවල් ටිකක් note down කරගන්න ඕනේ, නැත්නම් මම අද කියන ප්‍රශ්නේ කතා කරන්න වෙන්නේ නැහැ, right? Okay. So relation, attributes, and tuples and relationships that we have talked about. හරි. මෙන්න මේතන තියෙන part එක constraint කියන එක මම කතා කරනවා when we come to the SQL, right? මොකද SQL එකට තමයි අපිට මේ constraint කියන එක වැදගත් වෙන්නේ. So I'm not going to mix it up since we are designing the database today, right? So මම දැනට මේ page number, what is the page number? Yeah, 7. 7th page එක මම දැනට omit කරනවා, right? And again, this database management system and the components of those we'll talk about when the SQL begins, right? Okay, so now I'm shifting to the place where we have to discuss about the entity relationship diagram, or like the way of designing the database, right? So that is at the latter part of the right? So that is at the latter part of the of your tute. So it will start from page number 32, right? එතකොට මෙතන තියෙන්නේ diagramming part එකක්. එතකොට මේ diagramming part එක දැන් විභාගයේදී sections 3ටම එනවා, right? ඒ කියන්නේ MCQ paper එකේ ඔයගලන්ට MCQs අහන්න පුළුවන්. Structured paper එකේ structured questions අහලා තියෙනවා. Then essay paper එකේ one full question එකක් එනවා. And it is very when you know the concept, it is very easy to score. මේක අර DFD එක වගේ තමයි diagramming part එක, right? හැබැයි DFD එකේ තියෙන එකට වඩා concepts වෙනස්, right? Okay. So Now, yeah, I need you to take the paper and have this short note with me when I'm describing these things, right? Okay, so I'm going to import this particular one to your whiteboard, right? Hold on. මේක මට පොඩ්ඩක් තියලා කටියට දෙන්න. හරි. හරි. Right. So when you are drawing an ER diagram, these are the things that you need to go through, which we call the entities, attributes, relationship, and cardinality. Right. So, the first thing that you are going to concentrate is the entities. So the entity, we can identify an entity as a real world object, right? So it can be a person or it can be an institute, right? Kind of things. So if your scenario then විභාගයට ප්‍රශ්නය ඔයගලන්ට එන්නේ, you will be given a scenario and based on that scenario you are being asked to create or draw the ER diagram, right? So in that scenario you have to figure out what are the entities, what are the attributes, that means the things which describe the entities, and what are the relationship in between those things. And in that question they specifically saying state any assumptions that you have made. The මෙච්චර කාලයකට තිබ්බ ප්‍රශ්නවලදී assumptions වලට ලකුණු දීලා නැහැ. 2020 paper එකේ කොහොම වෙයිද දන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක market scheme එක ආවම බලන්න වෙනවා. එතකොට ඕගලන්ට assumptions make කරන්න වෙනවා මේක කරගෙන යනකොට. මොකද සමහර තැන්වල ඒගොල්ලෝ දේවල් clearly mention කරන්නේ නැතුව තියෙනවා. ඒතකොට එහෙම තැනක ඕගලන්ට diagram එක complete කරගන්න you have to make some assumptions. So that particular assumptions should be written right below the diagram. These are the assumptions made, like under the assumptions topic. So you can point it out. These are the things that I have made, right? So remember that particular thing. So an entity is going to be a real world object, and we are going to draw an entity using a square, right? So that square is a single line one, right? And there are situations where you have to further it using the double line one. I mean, make right? So it is a single. Right. So it is going to be a single line one. Yeah. So it is going to be a single line one, a square. So inside it, you are going to write a singular word. හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න එක. මොකද සිනාරියෝ එකේ ඕගලන්ට plural word පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන පුළුවන්, බහුවචන පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන පුළුවන්. But you have to write a singular word like student. So it's always going to be a singular format, right? And remember, in the entity relationship diagram, you can't repeat the entities. එක තැනයි අඳින්න පුළුවන්, right? ඒක නිසා diagram එක අඳිනකොට ඔයගලන්ට complex diagram අඳින්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා කොයිම වෙලාවකත් මොනවාද lines cross වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපිට lines අඳින්න ඕන වෙනවා මේකේ. So be careful, right? So you can draw it like this, student, teacher kind of things. always should be inside a rectangle and should be in the singular form, right? So there are two different categories which we call the strong entity and the weak entities, right? දැන් ඕගලන්ගේ short note එකේ ඔය කොලේ ඕගොල්ලෝ mention කරගන්න ඕනේ මෙන්න මේ දේවල් ටික, right? මම ඒකත් මෙතනම ලියන්නම් so you can easy to maintain that thing. So පළවෙනි එක entity, right? Make a real world objects කියලා mention කරගන්න. right? ඊට පස්සේ මෙතන මේ තියෙන entity එක කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදෙනවා කියලා පෙන්නන්න. strong entities, weak entities, right? එතකොට අපි strong entity එකක් අපි පෙන්නන්නේ අපේ ER diagram එකේ single line rectangle එකක් විදිහට, right? ඒක ඇතුලේ singular word එකක් තියෙනවා, noun එකක්. weak entity එකක් අපි පෙන්නන්නේ double line rectangle එකක් විදිහට, right? ඒක ඇතුලේ තියෙන්නේ singular noun එකක්. right? එතකොට මේක මේ strong the weak the කියන එක, it is given by your scenario and you have to find out according to the scenario. And again, when you are reading the scenario in the exam question, don't assume those, right? scenario එකේ කියලා නැත්තම් hint එකක් දීලා නැත්තම් weak කියන එකට just don't go to assume things, right? එහෙම ඒවට නෙවෙයි අපි assumptions කියලා කියන්නේ. අපි assumptions එන තැන් තියෙනවා, මම ඒක පෙන්නන්නම්. මෙන්න මේ වැඩේට අපිට assumption එකක් ඕන වෙනවා කියන එක. so ඒවා අපි assumptions විදිහට ලියන්න ඕනේ. දැන් weak entity එකක් නම් you should be given a hint, right? so weak entity එක කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා මම මුලින් කියලා ඉන්නවා. so we can define a weak entity like this: if an entity is going to cancel or is going to terminate upon another entity termination. එක entity එකක් නැති වෙනකොට තව entity එකක් එයත් එක්කම නැති වෙනවා නම් අන්න ඒකට අපි කියනවා අර automatically නැති වෙන කෙනාට අපි කියනවා weak entity එකක් කියලා. if you take a scenario of a school, there will be entities like teachers, students, classes, likewise. So a student entity has a relationship with the parent entity, but when you take out the student, parent entity will automatically cancelled, right? because without a student there won't be a parent to the school, right? එතකොට ඒක ඒ scenario එකට අදාළයි, right? maybe there is some other scenario where the student even though the student entity is cancelled, the parent entity is not going to be cancelled, right? එහෙම වෙලාවක එයා weak වෙන්නේ නැහැ. so ඒක නිසා මතක තියාගන්න, it is up to your scenario. scenario එකට against තමයි ඔයගොල්ලෝ weak the strong the කියන එක manage කරගන්න තියෙන්නේ, right? ඔය concept එක තේරුණාද? කට්ටියට පැහැදිලිද? පොඩ්ඩක් confirmation එකක් දෙන්න. right. right, great. Hari. so weak entity, now remember weak entity is given by a square and a strong entity is given by a square single line. weak entity is going to be double lines. Hari මේක ටක් ගාලා දාගන්න short note එකට. කාන්ති sir real world නෙමෙයිද කියලා මගෙන් අහන්නේ? ඔව්
මම දීලක
ඔව් දීලක
weekend ටික පොඩක් ආයෙ එක්ස්ප්ලেইন කරන්න.
okay spelling mistake එකද තිබුණේ මේ right, okay. මම මෙතන ලියලා තියෙන එක. Oh, right, okay, okay. It's real world object. Yes, yes. Thank you, Randisa. ඔව් දීලක කියන්නේ. දීලක මට ඔයා කියන එක ක්ලියර් නෑ පුතේ. ලයින් එක හිමීට ඇහෙන්නේ. බොහොම හිමින් ඇහෙන්නේ.
sorry sir මේ weekend එක ආයෙ පොඩ්ඩක් explain කරන්නකෝ.
week ඒ කියන්නේ දීලක මෙහෙම සිටුේෂන් එකක්. දැන් ඔයා හිතන්නකෝ ඉස්කෝලේක අපිට ඉස්කෝලේක තියෙන සිනාරියෝ එකක්. ඉස්කෝලේක database එකක් හදන්න කිව්වොත් අපිට හම්බ වෙනවා entities වර්ග student කියලා entity එකක් හම්බ වෙන්න පුළුවන්, teacher, classes එහෙම හම්බ වෙන්න පුළුවන් entities. ඒ වගේම තමයි student ලට අදාළව parent කියන entity එකකුත් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. right? හැබැයි ඒ සිනාරියෝ එකේ student කියන entity එක අපි අයින් කරොත් අපි හිතනවා මොහොතකට එයා student entity එක නැති කරනවා කියලා. එහෙම නැති කරොත් parent entity එකට independently ඉන්න බෑ. මොකද parent ඉස්කෝලේට connect වෙන්නේ student through. දැන් student නැති වුණා කියලා teacher නැති වෙන්නේ නැහැ. teacher කියන්නේ වෙනම independent entity එකක්. right? හැබැයි parent and student අතර relationship එකක් තියෙනවා නේද? student ඉන්න නිසා තමයි parent කෙනෙක් ඇති වෙලා තියෙන්නේ ඉස්කෝලේට. ඉස්කෝලේ සිනාරියෝ එකට අදාළ. එතකොට ස්ටුඩන්ට් නැති වෙනවා කියලා කියන්නේ parent automatically නැති වෙනවා කියන එක. ඒ කියන්නේ parent entity එක depends on the student entity. එහෙම වුණාම අපි parent entity එකට කියනවා weak entity එකක් කියලා.
ඒ කියන්නේ යම් මොකක් හරි දෙයක් මත depend වෙනවා නම් ඒක ඒ depend වෙන දේ තමයි weak entity එක නේ.
අන්න right. depend වෙන එක්කෙන තමයි weak entity. දැන් අපි ඉස්සරහට ඔය මේ තව ටිකක් ඉස්සරහට ගිහිලා relationships ගැන කතා වෙලා ඉස්සරහට යනකොට ඕක ඇඳෙනවා දීලා. ඒකට තව පැහැදිලි වෙයි කොහොමද කියලා.
sir හරි. thank you sir.
හරි. කට්ටිය මේක short note එකට දාගත්තද? ඕකේ නම් ටක් ගාලා මට respond එකක් දෙන්න. ඒක ඉස්සරහට යන්න පුළුවන්.
ඒක මම ලියාගත්තා sir.
හරි. right, okay. අනිත් කට්ටිය? හරි රන්දිස. right. අනිත් කට්ටිය? right, okay. Okay, the next one is the attributes. Right, you have to now you have to identify several kind of attributes in the ER diagram. So once the scenario is given, you have to figure out what are the things that are going to be the entities and what are the things that are going to be the attributes. Why I am saying this, from a scenario, now the way that we can identify an entity or an attribute when we find a noun inside a scenario. Right? ඔයගලගේ scenario එක ඇතුලේ තියෙන nouns ටික තමයි entities and attributes කියන දෙන්නට qualify වෙන්නේ. So when you have found a noun, you should be able to figure out whether this is an entity or this is an attribute. So it is easy to recognize. Now, if it is an entity, it is describing about a real world objects. And if it is an attribute, it is going to describe a particular real world object inside that scenario. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි අපේ scenario එක ඇතුලේ කියනවා නම් there are students in the school and student is having a name, address and a date of birth. So student is going to become the real world object, which is the entity, and name, address, date of birth are going to be the attributes, because those are the things which describes the scenario, describe the entity, right? So attribute means the nouns or the words which describes the entity further, right? මම ඒක මෙතන තියෙන definition එකත් එක්කම කතා කරලා ගන්නම්. Which described an entity of yes. So attribute describe an entity. Right? එතකොට attribute එක සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි අඳින්නේ oval shape එකකින්. And again attribute එක ඇතුළ singular form එකෙන් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. Right? So like name. හැබැයි දැන් අපි පහළට කතා කරනවා එක එක જાතියේ attributes. එතකොට මේ oval shape එක oval but lines වෙනස් වෙන්න ගන්නවා. ඒ අදාළ attribute එකට අදාළව. Right? Hari. So the very first attribute that we're going to talk is the composite attribute. Right? Composite attribute. Now this composite attribute is something like this. Now when you are having a name, when there is a name, this name can further divided into some more parts. Right? That division is described like this. So like we can say first name. For that we can use F name. And the second name. We are using S name for that. Right? මේක මේ විදිහට අපිට තව දුරටත් පොඩි පොඩි කොටස් වලට බෙදලා වෙන් කරන්න පුළුවන්. So the reason why we are having the composite attributes is because when in a ER diagram we should show the attributes in its atomic form. Atomic form එක කියලා කියන්නේ එක attribute එකක් යටතේ එක data එකයි අපිට එන්න පුළුවන්. The name එක ගත්තොත් කෑලි 3ක් 4ක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන් නමකට. එතකොට ඒක atomic වෙන්නේ නැහැ. So to make it atomic, we divided it further into more pieces. And again, very importantly, if it is not defined in your scenario, please do not make it a composite one. Right? ඒ කියන්නේ name කියලා දීලා තියෙන එකට hint එකක් scenario එකේ දීලා නැත්තම්, right? නිකං describe කරලා තියෙනවා a student is having a name, address and a date of birth. And there is no clue that the name is described as an composite attribute. So don't go for this. එක නිකං attribute එකක් විදියට oval shape එකක් ඇතුලේ name කියලා විතරක් ලිවීම හොඳටම ප්‍රමාණවත්. But if you got a hint something like this, a student is having a name, address and a date of birth, and student name consists of 3 parts. අන්න එහෙම එකක් කියලා තිබ්බොත් then they are indicating you, okay, it's better you divide your name into 3 parts as the first name, second name or third name, like as they describes it. If they are not describing it, then that is going to be an assumption. Right? මොකද scenario එකේ කියලා තියෙනවා නම කොටස් 3කට තියෙනවා කියලා. ඒක කොටස් 3 මොන වගේද කියලා නැත්නම් අපිට assumption එකක් ලියන්න වෙනවා. So the assumption, the parts of the name of a student is considered as first name, second name and third name. එහෙම කියලා අපිට diagram එකේ ඒක ඇඳලා පෙන්නන්න වෙනවා. Right? එහෙම කරන්නේ ආයෙත් සැරයක් hint එකක් දීලා තියෙනවා නම් විතරයි. නැත්නම් අපි ඔහොම එකක් කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වගේම තමයි මේ attributes කොහොමද entity එකක් එක්ක connect කරන්නේ? This is the way it's going to connect. So if this is the name of a student, so your student entity will be there and it is connected with a one single line. And then මේ විදිහට අපිට ඔහොම වටේට ඕන තරම් attributes we can have. Right? Okay, so this is called the composite attribute. Right? මේකටත් ගාලා ලියා ගන්න. මේ කැරි ටික එපා. ඉවර නම් ටක් ගාලා ඉවරයි කියන්න. So we can move. right කෙනෙක් ඉවරයි දෙන්නයි තුන් දෙනයි හතරයි පහයි හයයි 9ක් ඉන්නවා රූම් එකේ 7යි දීලක ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ බට් අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඩේටාබේස් වල දේවල් කියනකොට ස්පේසස් තියලා පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ නැහැ ජෙනරලි අපිට ස්පේස් තියලා ගන්න පුළුවන් f ස්පේස් එකක් name කියලා ගන්න පුළුවන් බට් අපි ඒක ලොකුවට encourage කරන දෙයක් නෙවෙයි මොකද සමහර programming languages වල ස්පේස් එක අවුලක් වෙනවා ඒක නිසා underscore එක පාවිච්චි කරන්න right
ඒ කියන්නේ Python වලගේනේ
ඔව් right එතකොට composite attribute එක හරි දෙවෙනි එක්කෙනා තමයි multi valued attribute right multi valued attribute එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ example එකක් විදිහට අපිට ගන්න පුළුවන් contact number නේද ඒතර contact number එක person කෙනෙක් ගත්තොත් employee කෙනෙක් ගත්තොත් employee ට contact numbers කීපයක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන් mobile phone එක there can be the home telephone number and he can have another mobile number so one can have three things so when you are going to store those things inside a database you need three separate places right so that means that particular attribute can contain many different data inside it then student name එක ගත්තොත් එහෙම නෙවෙයි එක නමයි තියෙන්නේ කෙනෙකුට නම් දෙක තුනක් නැහැනේ එක නමයි කොටස් කීපයක් තියෙනවා ඒ කොටස් ටික එකතු වෙලා තමයි name එක හදන්නේ but when it comes to the multi-value attribute it's just one attribute but it can have many values right so multi-value attribute is going to indicate like this with two lines and you are going to write the multi-value attributes name contact right so this is called the multi-value attribute so this is an attribute which can have different values මෙන්න මේ part එක හරි වැදගත් regarding a single instance කියන්නේ එක්කෙනෙක් සම්බන්ධයි right දැන් එතකොට ඔයගලන්ගේ scenario එකේ මේක විභාග ප්‍රශ්න එකක් තියෙනවා sports ගැන කියලා තිබ්බොත් type of sports ගැන කියලා තිබ්බොත් it's not going to be a multi-value one මොකද එක දරුවෙක් ස්පෝර්ට්ස් කීපයක් කරන්න පුළුවන් එතනදී අපි කියන්නේ එක්කෙනාට ගොඩක් තියනවා කියලා right එතකොට ස්පෝර්ට් කියන එක අපි multi value කියලා එතනදී අරගන්නේ නැහැ මොකද ස්පෝර්ට් කියන එක සිනාරියෝ එක කියවන් යනකොට ඕගලන්ට figure out වෙයි sport is going to be a separate entity මොකද ස්පෝර්ට් එකට නමක් තියෙනවා type එකක් තියෙනවා ඊළඟට අපි හිතමු ස්පෝර්ට් එකට අදාළව තියෙන මොනවා හරි constraints ටිකක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන් so sport is going to be kind of an object right ඒක ඔයගලන්ට scenario පැත්තෙන් කතා කරගෙන යනකොට වැඩි දුර තේරෙයි so remember multi value is going to be an attribute which can have different values for a single instant right so හොඳ උදාහරණය තමයි contact right you can have many different contact numbers regarding a one particular person right. තුන්වෙනි එක්කෙනා අපි අරගන්නවා complex attribute කියලා. right. තුන්වෙනි එක්කෙනා ලියන්න කලින් මේ දෙවෙනි එක්කෙනාට අක්කලා නෝට් එක දාගන්න.
සර්
ඔව් දීලක.
සර් අපි composite attribute එකේ definition එකක් දැම්මේ නෑනේ.
නෑ. ඒක අපිට පින්තූරෙන් figure out කරගන්න පුළුවන් දීලක.
සර් හරි.
නෝට් එකේ තියෙනවා මම මේ
සර්.
නෝට් එක හම්බෙන්න නිසා ඔයගොල්ලන්ට පොඩි ෂෝට් නෝට්
හරි
එකක්
හරි.
වැඩේ කරගන්න ලේසි වෙනවා.
හරි. හරි සර්. හරි සර් මම ඒක නෝට් එකක් කරගත්තා.
right okay. අනිත් කට්ටිය okay 3 දෙනෙක් හරි 4යි 5යි 6යි 7යි 8යි right okay. හරි complex attribute එක කියලා කියන්නේ මෙන්න මේ වගේ දෙයක්. මේක සාමාන්‍ය this is not going to use inside the ER diagram. It is just a concept that we are just a concept means it can be there but we are not very much using that on a ER diagram. Complex attribute means a combination of composite and the multi-value attributes, right? Combination of composite and multi-value attributes, right? So as an example, we can take it like this. We can take the same example which we call the contact. And this particular contact can be divided into two parts, which is called the country code and the local code. Right? So, මේ ලොකු පින්තූරේ බැලුවොත් it's kind of a composite, but contact is going to be a multi-value one. So we call this a complex variable, right? Hari, මේවත් අඳගන්න. right. එක්කෙනෙක් හරි මෙතන combination of කියලා එන්න ඕනේ. then I okay, right. හරි Right. Hari. Is right. So the fourth type is, there are two types that we need to talk together: stored and derived attributes. Stored and derived attributes. Now this stored and derived attribute means from a stored attribute, you can derive another attribute. So that is called the derived attribute. So something like this. For a student entity, you can have an attribute called date of birth, DOB, date of birth. And from that, you can derive the age. So derive attribute is indicated by dotted lines, right? So date of birth is the stored attribute. This is called the stored attribute. And this is called the derived attribute. Hari, and again. Right, so derived attribute is derived from the stored attribute. derived කියලා කියන්නේ රන්දිස සිංහල අර්ථය තමයි ව්‍යුත්පන්න කරනවා කියලා. කියන්නේ යමකින් යමක් අරගන්නවා කියලා. දැන් අපිට date of birth එක තියෙනවා නම් employee කෙනෙක්ගේ we can calculate the age නේ. So we only need the date of birth. We don't need the age detail. So we can derive it. We can calculate that. Not only the calculation meaning, or derive කරගන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Right. Hari. Right. තුන්දෙනෙක් ඉවරයි. Right. හොඳයි. හරි. Right. අපි ඉස්සරහට යමු. හරි. So after this stored and derived attribute, there is another one called descriptive attribute. Now this won't be very much clear to you because you don't know about a relationship, right? But I'm going to show it here and we are going to discuss the relationship as the next topic, right? So when you are having entities, right? So let's take student entity right over here. So this is called the descriptive attribute. Right, so when you're having student over here and a teacher entity over here, right? So there is something called a relationship which we are indicating inside a diamond shape. This is going to be a verb, right? Is taught by. Or නැත්නම් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට දාන්න පුළුවන් is teaching. නැත්නම් just teaching, right? Doesn't matter. So මෙයා තමයි මේ දෙන්න අතර තියෙන relationship එක හදන කෙනා. So it's a single line and this is also a single line. right? So far we talk about the attributes which belongs to these places, right? For the entities like name, address. So when it comes to the class teacher, there can be a teacher ID, right? And something called qualifications, right? We can have attributes up on here as well. So this is when we are having an attribute on a relationship. Now this is called the relationship. So I'm going to tell this as the session hour. Session hours. Right? So this particular thing is called the descriptive attribute. Then how we are going to figure out whether this is a descriptive one or not? Now we can figure out it by reading our scenario, and if any attribute describes, or like if any attribute cannot be categorized only to a one single entity. Attribute එකක් අපිට හම්බෙනවා එක කෙනෙකුට විතරක් සීමා කරන්න බැරි. දැන් මෙතන සිනාරියෝ එක ගත්තොත් මේ session hour කියලා කියන්නේ teacher කෙනෙක් student කෙනෙකුට උගන්වන වෙලාව. Right? So number of hours where a teacher is spending on a student. Right? So if we put it on the teacher's side, then we won't be able to recognize to which student that she was taught. She was teaching, right? And when we categorize this under the student entity, then we can't figure out who is the teacher that has been taught to the student for this much of sessions, or like this much of hours. Qualify කියලා කිව්වේ රන්දිස qualifications අපි teachers ලාට ගියාම අපි දන්නවා diploma qualified teachers ලා degree qualified teachers ලා right master qualified teachers ලා කියලා එහෙම category වෙනවා පුතේ right ඒ වගේ qualification එක එතන ඒක scenario wise තමයි ඔයාට හම්බෙන්නේ right so descriptive attribute එක කියලා කියන්නේ entities එක entity එකකට විතරක් තනි කරලා තියන්න බැරි attribute. So, A දෙන්නව සම්බන්ධ වෙන relationship එකට we are going to assign that particular attribute. So it means it belongs to both the parts. So like that attribute is filled by both the entities, or like the participating entities. Right? So it is called a descriptive attribute. Hi. තේරුණාද මෙතනට වෙනකම්? Is it clear?
Sir, descriptive attribute එක පොඩ්ඩක් explain කරන්නකෝ මේ internet poor connection.
Right, okay. දීලක descriptive කියලා කියන්නේ student and teacher කියන දෙන්නගෙන් එක්කෙනෙකුට විතරක් තනි කරලා තියන්න බැරි attributes පුතේ. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ example එකට දානවා ගත්තොත්. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ session hours කියන එක අපි අරගන්නේ teacher කෙනෙක් student කෙනෙකුට උගන්වන hours ගන්න. එතකොට මේක ටීචර් ගේ පැත්තේ තිබ්බොත් ප්‍රශ්නයක් එනවා මොන ස්ටුඩන්ට්ද මෙච්චර පැය ගාණක් ඉගෙනන්නේ. ඒක ඩිස්ක්‍රයිබ් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද ටීචර් ගේ පැත්තේ ඩිස්ක්‍රයිබ් වෙන්නේ ටීචර් ගේ දේවල් විතරයි. sorry. and අපි session hours ටික ස්ටුඩන්ට් ගේ පැත්තේ තිබ්බොත් එතකොට ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙනවා මෙච්චර පැය ගාණක් ඉගෙනුවේ මොන ටීචර්ද කියලා. right? ඒතර ඒක රිෆ්ලෙක්ට් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක නිසා මේ ඇට්‍රිබියුට් එක දෙන්නම එකතු වෙලා data fill වෙන තැනක්. අන්න ඒ වගේ දේවල් අපි descriptive attribute එකක් බවට පත් කරනවා. තේරුණා?
හරි සර්.
right great. හරි. එතකොට ඔය තමයි ඕගලන්ට හම්බෙන attribute types. So there are two types of entities which are strong and weak, and there are 5 types of attributes which are called the composite, multi-value, at least there are like more than 5. Maybe composite, attribute, complex, stored, derived, and descriptive. There are 6 types of attributes. Right? Derive එකයි stored එකයි අපි එකට කතා කරමු. right මේක ටක් ගාලා ඇඳගෙන ඉවර කරගන්න.
සර්
ඔව් තිලක.
සර් අර මේ ස්ක්වයා එක වගේ අර කිරිබත් කෑල්ල වගේ
ඔව්
සිම්බල් එකෙන් මොකද්ද සර් රිප්‍රසන්ට් කරන්නේ?
රිලේෂන්ෂිප් එක. ඒක දැන් ඊළඟට කතා කරනවා මේ දීලා. right ඉවර වෙච්ච ගමන් කියන්න. right අනිත් කට්ටිය එක්කෙනෙක් ඉවරයි දෙන්නෙක් ඉවරයි. හරි 3 දෙනයි. හතරයි. හරි. තමයි මට තප්පරයක් දෙන්න. හරි right අපි ඉස්සරහට යමු. දැන් කතා කරන්න හදන්නේ තුන්වෙනි component එක which we call the relationships. right පොඩ්ඩක් note එක refer කරනවා මගේ හරිච්ච මොනවා හරි තියනවාද කියලා බලන්න. multi-value okay, composite okay, stored and descriptive okay, right okay. So the relationship yes. yeah so relationship describe actually the relationship in between the entities. So in your scenario, how you are going to figure out the relationship is where you find in a sentence. So inside a sentence you can find the nouns, and nouns are connected through the verbs. So verbs indicates the relationships. So there can be a sentence like this: a student is taught by many different teachers. So in that particular sentence, student is an entity, teacher is an entity, is taught by, or like is teaching, you can take it on the other way around as well, is going to be a relationship. And in another case, someone can say employee is work at a department. So employee is an entity, department is an entity, worked at or like working is going to be a relationship, right? So likewise, a student is assigned to a class. So student is an entity, class is an entity, is assigned is going to be your relationship, right? So relationship is going to indicate by a diamond shape, and you are going to write a verb inside that particular shape. And there are three types actually, according to our syllabus, there are three types of relationship, which we call unary, binary, and ternary, right? And there is something called n-nary. I'll define it to you as well, right? So let's go with those uh, relationship types. So the first type is going to call the unary relationship. So unary relationship means you are going to have a one single entity yes. මට තප්පරයක් දෙන්න. Right. So unary relationship means you are going to have a one single entity. So let me describe it first. Describe means I'll take the example. If you have something like this, an employee is managing other employees. Right now, there you can find only one noun, right? Here it's the employee, and again the employee, again the same entity. Is managing is the verb, right? So this particular one can be drawn as a unary relationship. So employee is right there, and the relationship is going to be, you can put is managing or like is managed, right? Or any way you want, or like just managing. I'm going to put is managing, and you are going to connect it like this. So one entity and one relationship. So we call this a unary relationship, right? Hari. මේක ලියාගන්න ටක් ගාලා. Okay, ඉවරනම් ටක් ගාලා කියන්න.
සර් පොඩ්ඩක් ඉන්න සර්.
හරි හරි.
සර්
ඔව් දීලක.
සර් අතන තියෙන එක්සැම්පල් එක an employee is mapping නේ සර්.
managing MANAGING.
හරි.
right දෙන්නෙක් ඉවරයි. තව කට්ටිය අනේ 4 දෙනෙක් ඉවරයි. අනිත් අය හරි 5යි right okay හරි. හරි. මම අපි ඉස්සරහට යමු. දෙවෙනි type එක binary relationship. This is the one we find in very frequently in our scenarios, right? Binary relationship. So binary relationship means something like this. An employee works at a department, right? So there you can find two nouns, employee, department, and your verb is works at or just works, right? So easy for you to draw. So here you have employee, and inside the relationship you can have works at or just work, and the other entity is going to be department. Right. හරි. මේකට අඳ ගන්න ටක් ගාලා. right. හරි කට්ටිය ඉවර වුණා. ටක් කෙනෙක් ඉවරයි. Right, okay. Right. Hari. එහෙනම් තුන්වෙනි එකට move වෙනවා. Right. තුන්වෙනි එක්කෙනාට අපි කියනවා ternary relationship. Right. So ඒක අපිට පුළුවන් මේ වගේ වාක්‍යයකට map කරගන්න. Right. මේක this is something from your exam papers. Right. So it says pharmacist issues drugs to the patient. Right. So in this particular sentence, you have pharmacist as a noun, drugs as a noun, patient as a noun. So the verb that connect these things is issues. Now these two other things are not considered as verbs. Those are the conjunctions, right? So මෙහෙම වුණාම එක verb එකකින් තුන් දෙනෙක් connect වෙනවා. Right? So you can draw a ternary relationship in between these kind of things. Right? So ඔයාගේ scenario එකේ ඔයාට හොයන්න තියෙන්නේ මේ වගේ තැන්. That's all. හෙව්වා ඒකට අදාළව diagram එක ඇඳලා. Right? So if you are drawing this, this is going to be the pharmacist. And this is issues or issue. And here it's going to be the drug. And here it's going to be the patient. Right? Okay. Hari. Make a dagan takala. Right. You look okay. Right. Hari. So once you're done with this, you know how to deal with the entities, you know how to deal with the attributes, you know how to deal with the relationships. So basically the components of an ER diagram is done. But there is another thing that we need to concentrate. That is something called cardinality, right? Or the cardinality ratio. So cardinality ratio means, now in this particular thing, මේ වගේ පොඩි diagram එකක් ඇඳුනම they are going to describe how much of instances are going to work with the other entity. ඒ කියන්නේ එක entity එකක් අනිත් තවත් entity එකක කොච්චර instances ගානක් එක වැඩ කරනවා. Right? So number of instances which are working from one entity to another entity. එකක් එක්ක තව කොච්චරක් වැඩ කරනවද? එක pharmacist කෙනෙක් drugs කොච්චර issue කරනවද? එකයිද ගොඩක්ද? එක drug එකක් pharmacist ලා කී දෙනෙක්ගෙන් issue කරනවද? එකයිද ගොඩයිද? So those kind of a relationship, those kind of a thing is called the cardinality ratio, right? So the next we are going to talk about the cardinality ratio. So there are three types of cardinality ratios. We say 1 to 1, which is going to indicate as this, and 1 to many, which is going to indicate it like this, or the other way around, like m to 1, and many to many. And remember, it's going to be m to n, right? Not m to m. Right? එහෙම තමයි ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකේ ඒගොල්ලෝ පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන්නේ. හරි. දැන් අපි බලමු මේක කොහොමද ෆිගර් අවුට් කරගන්නේ කියලා. Right? So the first part, 1 to 1 relationship. Right? හරි. දැන් relationship එක මොන වගේද නැත්නම් ඒ cardinality ratio එක මොන වගේද කියලා අඳුන ගන්න ඕගලන්ගේ සිනාරියෝ එකේ තියෙන්න ඕනේ ඒක අඳුන ගන්න අවශ්‍ය වෙන clue එකක්. If a clue is not given specifically, then we have to write the assumption and put a cardinality ratio. It is a must. ඔන්න ඔතන තමයි අපි assumptions ලියන්න එන අනෙක් තැන. Right? එතකොට මම එක තැනක් කිව්වා අර attributes එහෙම composite attribute යනකොට ඒගොල්ලෝ භාගයට කියලා තිබ්බොත් ඒක කොහොමද වෙන්නේ කියලා assumption එකක් ලියන්න ඕනේ. මෙතන relationship එක භාගයට විස්තර කරලා තිබ්බොත් ඉතුරු ටික අපි assume කරන ටික අපි assumption එකක් විදිහට ලියන්න ඕනේ. Right? Now if the clue is given to you as a full thing, it's going to be something like this. A teacher is teaching to a student, and a student is taught by only one teacher. Right? So if you're having something like this, so we are going to argue according to this particular thing, and we are going to find out what is the final ratio. So here you can find how many different nouns. Teacher is there, student is there. So you can take is teaching as the verb, or you can take is taught by. දෙකෙන් එකයි තෝරගන්න. මොකද එකම දෙන්න ගැනනේ කියලා තියෙන්නේ. So one relationship is enough. Right? So how we are going to write it? Teacher will be here. Is teaching is here. And student will be here. Right? දැන් අපි කොහොමද ඒ කියන්නේ අපි මෙන්න මේ tag දෙකට we are going to put either 1 or m. Right? ඔය tag දෙකට මොනවාද එන්නේ කියන එක figure out කරගන්න මෙහෙමයි. මෙන්න මේක හරි වැදගත්. මේක කියවනකොට දැන් අපි මේ relationship එක දෙපැත්තට කියවනවා. When we are reading it, we have to start it from the singular, from a singular instant. Right? එතකොට අපි බලන්නේ එක ටීචර් කෙනෙක් කොච්චර ස්ටුඩන්ට්ස්ලා ගන්නකට උගන්වනවා. ඒ ටීචර් ඉඳලා ස්ටුඩන්ට් ගේ පැත්තට කියනවා. When you are reading from student side to the teacher side, you will be looking for like one student is taught by how many teachers. You are going to ask the question. So according to that, you are going to plot it. So if I read my relationship onto this side, so one teacher, according to the scenario, is teaching only to one student. ඔය පැත්තට කියවුවොත්. මේක අනිත් පැත්තට කියවුවොත් one student is taught by only one teacher. අනිවාර්යෙන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේක දෙපැත්තට කියවලා බලන්න ඕනේ. Now this is going to be a rough work, right? So from this side, you are going to take the maximum value. Now here you don't have a maximum value, both are same, so you can simply say this is going to be 1. මේක කොටු කරන්නේ නැහැ. මම මේ කොටුව දාලා තියෙන්නේ ලියවෙන්න ඕනේ කියන තැන පෙන්නන්න. And you are going to do the same from this part. මේ දෙන්නගෙන් ලොකු අගය තෝරන්න. So it is 1 again. Right, so we are going to put 1 to 1. දැන් ඔයගලන්ට මේක rough work කරන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. එක සැරේ කියවුවම ඔළුවට යනවා. If you are not having it, so just do it and see. හැබැයි මේක diagram එකේ මෙහෙම මේ මම මේ කොළ පාටින් indicate කරන ටික diagram එකේ ඇඳ පෙන්නන්න එපා. Right, diagram එකේ තියෙන්නේ මම ඔය උඩ කළු පාටින් අතර තියෙන එක විතරයි. ඒකේ මේ රතු පාටින් තියෙන කොටුව එන්නේ නැහැ. Right, we are not going to have that. හරි, මේක තේරුණාද? ඔව්ලමයි? Right, good. ඊළඟට කොහොමද one to many එකක් manage කරගන්නේ? So second one is one to many relationships. Now that kind of a scenario is going to be like this. A teacher is teaching to many students and a student is taught by only one teacher. Right? We are having two entities, teacher teaching to students. හරි, දැන් කොහොමද අපි ආගියු කරන්නේ? අපේ දීලා තියෙන සිනාරියෝ එකට අදාළව බැලුවොත්, if you are reading to this side, one teacher is teaching to many students. That's how the scenario says. And if you are reading to this particular side, one student is taught by only one teacher. So from this part, the bigger value is 1 since they are same. So from this side, the bigger value is going to be m, right? Not the right, not the 1. Got it? ළමයි තේරුණාද? Great. Right. The last one, the third one is many-to-many relationship. Now that's going to be like this. A teacher is teaching to many students and students are taught by many teachers. So how we are going to have this? Teacher will be here. Teaching is the relationship. Student will be here. And when we are reading on this side, one teacher is teaching to many students. That's how it says. And when we are reading to this side, one student is taught by many teachers. So how we are going to code that? It says students are taught by many teachers. So එක student කෙනෙක් ගත්තොත් එයාට teachers ලා ගොඩක් උගන්වන්න ඕනේ. So we always now scenario එක මොන විදිහට දුන්නා we always starting from the one side. One teacher is teaching to how many students? That's what we are seeking. Then one student is taught by how many teachers? That is what we are seeking. So according to this has the value of m as the maximum value. So since you are using m on one side, this is also having an m. So we are going to use n as the other side. Right? So you are going to put n to the other side. So this says many-to-many relationship. Right. Clear the? Right. හොඳයි. දැන් ටක් ගාලා ලියාගමු. මෙතන තියෙනවා ඉවර වෙච්ච ගමන් කියන්නේ මම පොඩ්ඩක් උඩහට ස්ක්‍රෝල් කරන්න. Right? So we are talking about cardinality ratio. So this is the cardinality ratio. ඔය short note එක දිගටම ඔයගොල්ලෝ ගාව තියාගන්න. ER diagram සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට බලන්න තියෙන major components ටික ඕකේ තියෙනවා. ආයි ඔයගොල්ලන්ට tube එකෙන් short කර කර ඉන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ.